Happy holidays, everyone! Roughly around the time we made the Designing for Luck video, I was describing this series to a friend. He, not all that familiar with video games, asked me if my series would help him learn how to play video games. I told him no, and then thought for a bit on how there aren't that many great guides on how to get into video games. I'm sure that many of you out there have tried to introduce a parent or friend who aren't gamers to your favorite games, and found that it didn't quite have the effect you were hoping for in showing them one of your favorite hobbies. So, this video is dedicated to anyone who ever wanted to pick up a controller, or wanted to help someone pick up a controller, but either never did or set it right back down. To those of you trying to look for your first game, welcome. I know video games can be a daunting thing to learn, and it sucks dealing with something that you aren't totally familiar with, but hopefully I can show you a couple of games that'll make it that much easier to get in, and introduce you to whole genres of games. Now this list is by no means comprehensive, and not all these games are the easiest, but they all have something in common. Letting the player either handle the game at their own pace, or are quick and feel familiar for a player to get a good grip on. I've included timestamps in the description for different genres if they interest you, and will list where these games are most easily and readily available as they come up. So truly, thanks for taking the time to view this. This hobby means a lot to me, and I hope I can help you get something out of it more than a brief addiction to Candy Crush Saga.
Hey, it's time to make some crazy money. Are you ready? Here we go!
You're in a car, you drive people to places. No laws, go. Crazy Taxi's simplicity and sheer energy are its most brilliant assets. You have two buttons, one to accelerate and one to brake and go backwards. Drive to the zones, follow the arrow above your head, go really fast, cause property damage, jump off the stuff, do it again so you can keep driving. It's a feedback loop that gives you more playtime if you're better at it, while never being particularly punishing. If the player fails to deliver someone to a stop on time, there's often another passenger waiting for them close by. And after one game, it's likely a new player will want to play another. It's the same kind of feeling someone gets from a game like Overwatch or League of Legends, wanting to try new things out and getting hooked on that just one more game feeling. Crazy Taxi allows for this in a controlled but invitingly over-the-top environment and a very intuitive goal. You drive the car real fast and go anywhere you want. Add in an amazing punk pop soundtrack with the ability to customize what tunes you drive to, and it's even harder to put it down. It's the formula that made Outrun so popular back in the day, perfected. The original Kirby Superstar remains the ultimate co-op experience for a new player. While Sonic 2 has what many claim is the perfect little brother mode with Tails, Superstar ends up evolving that by making the second player really feel like their contributions matter. The first player controls the screen scrolling, but the second player can still open doors, fight mini-bosses, all sorts of things. Better yet, all of the potentially difficult platforming segments are all but removed. Kirby's partner always just zipping right back to him after falling into a bottomless pit. And if they run out of health, there's a grace period for them to run into another enemy, or for the player controlling Kirby to give them their power and BAM! Right back to full capacity. There's a ton of fun that goes from experimenting with new powers and new characters, letting a new player latch on to a favorite very quickly. And the semi-beat-em-up platforming formula works wonders at bringing new players in. But the real star of the show is the Revenge of Meta Knight mode. After completing multiple mini-adventures, Player 2 gets to take center stage as the controller of a thrilling escape sequence. Using all they've learned with as many continues as needed to learn the course, the game gives a beginning player the perfect chance to shine and save the day.
Well, you found me. Congratulations. Was it worth it? The only thing you've managed to break so far is my heart.
You want to teach your mom how to play Overwatch? Make her play Portal first. Portal is such a genius title, as most of the game is a tutorial that barely feels like a tutorial. Every element is introduced in a fun, yet isolated way. Looking around, moving around, shooting a gun, interacting with objects, momentum, ledge boundaries and awareness, the possibility of death, managing 2 different kinds of fire at once, enemy fire, all are introduced one by one and in a way that allows the player to feel achievement for overcoming each one. Only 2 obstacles in the entire game actively threaten the player without letting the player prepare first. The first is very easy and lets them respawn very close should they fail, but is a strong narrative beat, so overcoming it feels very rewarding. And the second is the final boss, and acts as a welcoming hand to other games where enemies will actively antagonize them. Portal hits the secret mark of rewarding the player without patronizing the player, making discovering the basics of the game into a cerebral challenge. Add in GLaDOS's excellent dialogue that adds some mystique without actively insulting the player like its sequel, and you truly have a winner that will serve as a good walkthrough into any shooter. RPGs get a bad rap to casual players because a newcomer has no real interest in learning all the intricate strategy or reading pages of lore or breaking the game through a complicated web of numbers. Paper Mario simplifies things a lot, putting some simple fun back into a genre long defined by spreadsheets. The action command system that defines the Mario RPGs is at its most inviting here, being simpler but also being more varied than most other games in the series, helping the player feel more immediately engaged. You push a button before you attack or defend and you do more damage. Bam! Strategy and skill all in one. Paper Mario gives the player an incredibly colorful world, and the familiar designs of the Mario series turn into characters that players can learn a bit more about. The game's battle menu is much more user-friendly than Final Fantasy's blue boxes, and helps to distinguish the importance of different tactics. But perhaps the game's greatest success is its badge system, a massive improvement over the equipment systems of other games. It not only has more immediate benefits, it encourages trying out new strategies as well, the cornerstone to any good RPG. Even if there are only so many variations, every player can go through the game with the Mario that's most comfortable for them to play as, making Mario, oddly, one of the best protagonists in the genre, from a mechanical standpoint at least. The game's sequel, The Thousand Year Door, is also a decent starting point, but the first game's simpler and more lighthearted plot, easier gameplay, and more open level structure should be more engaging to a new player. Also, GameCube games are impossible to get now. The Pokemon series is also a good entry point to RPGs, because the games naturally invite creativity, since you can just take about any team you want to the Elite Four, but you'll have an easier time if you try to take a balanced team. Pokemon Black or Pokemon White are my personal picks to start with, because their plots kick in fast and are surprisingly self-aware. The game's first gym also does an excellent job of explaining weaknesses in an intuitive way, and sets of Pokemon feel separate enough that players won't feel overwhelmed at the prospect of catching them all. But most main series Pokemon games are fine introductions, and Paper Mario is still the recommended torchbearer for a starting RPG. Nope, not that one. There we go. Wait. Perfect. While many would point to the current Telltale adventure game formula as a way of introducing storytelling, it's very important to remember that the abundance of quick reactions that a player unfamiliar with their controller might not be able to react to in time. The Walking Dead and its ilk are comfortable for slightly more seasoned gamers ready to give input as needed and react in time to various decisions. newer players would appreciate something where the pace is more controlled, where they can get used to a new world and make choices in their own time. And what's a more plotting, drawn-out choice than romance? This category is a bit split, as Harvest Moon is a better illustrator of choice, and Dragon Quest V is a better illustrator of a story that's more powerful because it's a video game. But both go through the same core mechanics. In Harvest Moon's case, it's about adapting to a new town, choosing and learning what things to grow, how to best build your farm, and how to charm whatever lovely collection of pixels you'd like. It's a simple tale of growing up and growing self-reliant, something reflected in a new player as they start needing less and less help to play the game. Dragon Quest V, on the other hand, is an RPG about growing up. Your character starts as a child, grows up, marries, and eventually has a son who goes on to have his own adventures. The Dragon Quest games are always very simple RPGs, and while they can be unforgiving, there's nothing that can't be handled at the player's pace. Best of all, the player is allowed to choose who to marry, which guides the path of their character's life from beginning to end. It's the kind of experience that can't be given by film or books, and Dragon Quest's cute and universally appealing aesthetics help it stand out as more accessible than the personas of the world. While these games are a bit more complex than the other games on this list, they're ones that can be picked up and understood with little difficulty, and can make for an excellent true first bond to a gaming world.
Enter the Tekken.
I want to tell a bit of a story for this one. I work a summer camp, and every other Thursday we'd take a group of between 50 or 60 kids to one of those mini golf, go-kart, bumper boat, activity center things. Anyway, there was an arcade attached, and several of the boys were really quiet, not really talking with each other, and when they did, they were fighting. So, I took them up to the arcade to play Tekken 5 with me. At first it was, "Wow, you're really good," as I whooped them with my limited knowledge of 2 combo strings and a few grabs with King. But slowly, they picked up different characters. One took Law, one took Devil Jin, one took Marduk, and they, with no prior experience in the genre, started hammering out a couple different strings found through button mashing and adapted into a strategy. And they beat me, and then started beating each other. And they, some kids with very limited video game experience, became friends. Tekken is a really easy game to understand. There are 4 attack buttons, and each button is for a single limb. You hit them in different orders, and they do different things. The rosters are large, giving a new player a chance to experiment, or even just fumble around and find a favorite. And the life bars are small, so rounds go quick enough that the feeling of just one more hits harder than, say, a Marvel vs. Capcom or a Smash Brothers. Tekken is just an easy, fun way to play, where even a slight bit of proficiency will allow a newcomer to keep up with all but the best, and truly feel a rush when they understand. Tekken 3, 5, and 7 are all solid starting points, and I recommend all of them wholeheartedly. Also, we did a video on Tekken 7, you should check it out. It's right here. It's cool. For a genre that's so mechanically straightforward, getting into visual novels can be very difficult since their pacing can be slow as molasses. Thankfully, Phoenix Wright addresses this concern front and center, so it's not surprising that it was one of the first successful visual novels for a Western audience. Your best friend's been charged with murder, and it's up to you to prove him innocent, giving immediate tension and direction to the game. And it's filled with so many quirky characters and over-the-top drama that the minute-to-minute gameplay stays very engaging. It allows the title to come across as a zany puzzle game, constantly letting the player feel clever by giving them just enough options to work out basic logic puzzles, without getting confused or needing hours of character backstory heaped onto them. This is combined with the second case of the game holding a lot of narrative depth and emotion, keeping new players invested past the initially more goofy premise. The game isn't perfect, and the third trial in particular can be a bit of a slog since it's filled with boring examination sequences, but even still, the cases fit into a very nice arc that makes each one significant and gradually increase the difficulty in a very sensible way. Add in 2 direct sequels that are just as easy to pick up and continue the story, and you've got yourself a visual novel to stick with in a genre that's very easy to put down.
Storm, earth, and fire, heed my call.
The popularity of MOBAs like League of Legends are only matched by their inaccessibility. Getting into the genre, with its multiple key bindings and huge requirements on spatial awareness in potentially multiple areas, is kind of horribly daunting for a newcomer. If only there were a single-player experience that could slowly teach micromanagement through attachment to and leveling specific, stronger characters that could honestly easily translate to skill in multiplayer and... yeah, that's right, Warcraft 3, yeah, pretty good, yeah. Warcraft 3's a great package. It's a high fantasy world that's very easy to get sucked into, and its greatest strength toward beginners comes in the form of 2 characters, Thrall and Arthas. Thrall serves as your tutorial guy. He's strong, he moves fast, he's got a cool chain lightning ability that lets you hit a bunch of guys at once. Arthas, meanwhile, is the playable character for the first long stretch of the game. At the start, he has 2 strong abilities. One for the player to heal themselves, and one to make themselves invincible for a few seconds. This combo allows a new player to take a breather whenever they need as they learn the controls, and soon they'll be able to use their healing abilities on other units to start to learn the micromanaging aspects of the genre. By the time there's a shift in characters, they'll be adept enough to handle the challenges ahead, and halfway through the game, Thrall comes back among more difficult enemies in order to see the player through the game's difficulty spike. Even if Warcraft 3's competitive balance is broken, it remains a fantastic charge into the world of top-down gaming. If you plan on your controller of choice being a keyboard and mouse, I highly suggest this game as your starting point. Perhaps ironically, traditional platformers remain a hard genre to get into without a particularly solid footing. Super Mario Bros. Basically invented the genre, and being the defining game of the original Nintendo means that a lot of those games were based off of it, and thus the genre as a whole. If you didn't like the foundation, it's unlikely that you liked the genre very much even as it grew up. While New Super Mario Bros. On the DS attracted new customers by being an easier and more accessible 2D platformer, we wanted to give first-time players something that better fits with the at-their-own-pace philosophy. A game with large stretches of land, significantly fewer bombless pits, and tons of fun experimentation. Enter Donkey Kong Country 3. Dixie Kong is rivaled only by Tails in how powerful her skills are for a platforming protagonist. Her helicopter twirl is one of the most generous tools for teaching a new player not only how to land from platform to platform, but how to hold a controller in the way that makes running and jumping in tandem feel natural. Donkey Kong Country 3's levels are themed around nature, and of the game's first 2 worlds, only 1 level has a bottomless pit, and it's barely a feature of the level. Filled with secrets and friendly music, DKC3 isn't a walk in the park as a game, but it experiments with the objective in every level, ensuring a player won't get bored. If they have someone to help them through a gimmick level they don't particularly like, and there are some stinkers in the bunch, they'll be able to adapt quickly and remember the levels they do like very fondly. Donkey Kong Country 3 is a platformer that gets the absolute most out of its mechanics, while still letting the player jump around and figure out how to get good at most of the controls, making it feel like a fantastic jumping off point into the platformer genre.
It's Banjo-Kazooie! The coolest headbanging, beak-busting, sky-flying, rock-hopping, egg-shooting, tag-teaming duo in a new game with so many thrills, chills, spells, and splats, you won't be able to put it down!
Yeah, this one could honestly be its own episode, so... we'll get to it. Well, that's the end of my list. While there are genres not covered and other games to mention, hopefully one of the games on this list piqued your interest. To those of you watching who know games, hopefully this showed some of what makes games accessible and what solid building blocks are for various genres. But regardless of your reason for being here, thank you. This has been How to Design for Beginners, and happy holidays. We'll see you all in 2018.
As laat in spoor.